12th, 2022. It is 7:26 p.m. This is the Finance and Revenue Committee meeting with myself, Nick Allen, Bernie Flynn, and Brian McGinnis. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order and move on to item number 2, which is comment, suggestions, petitions by residents in attendance regarding items not on the agenda. Alrighty, seeing none, we will move right ahead into 3A, our September 2022 financials.
Good evening. If we could start on page 2, please, Jeff. So looking at the September 2022 cash balances, we started the month of September with $16,940,425 in cash. Jeff, could you go to page 2, please? Yeah, the next one. There you go. We brought in $8,767,933 in cash. We spent or transferred between funds $9,441,528. This left us with an ending cash balance of $16,266,830. Of this amount, $9,939,223 is for restricted purposes. Moving over to page 3, our interfund activity. If you just scroll down a little bit, please. As you can see, there's been no increases or decreases, so we are still sitting at a little over $9.6 million interfund activity between the funds. Moving over to page 4, please. I wanted to provide an update on the American Rescue Plans. We actually received our second tranche at the end of September. So we have our total payment, which is a little over $2 million. Borough Council has already approved allocations that total $776,960. Of that amount, $522,315 has currently been spent. So we are sitting at a cash balance in this account of $1,577,418. Moving over to page 5, please. The budget to actual summary for the year ended September 30th. We had actual revenues of $30,280,913. This is offset by actual expense of $25,447,164. This leaves us with a net income for the year of $4,833,749, and of this amount, $3,473,706 is attributable to the general fund. Looking at the highlights through 9/30/2022, at this point in time, we would expect the budget line items to have about 25% left. Looking at the revenues for the general fund, both EIT and real estate taxes continue strong. One good point I'd like to note, I've been, up here every month saying that the transfer has not been coming in as expected. We did receive a big payment in September for $168,000. So there's about 28% left in that line item, which makes me confident that, that number will come in better than what I thought it was going to be. We received our state aid at the end of September. We actually received more than what we had budgeted. We received $828,872. This is $67,000 more than what we had budgeted. Of that amount, $618,189 went to the police pension fund, and $210,683 went to the non-uniform fund. At this point in time, we have satisfied our MMO. So that's a very good thing as well. Sewer rentals, they're at about 37% right now, which is closer than they have been all year long. So I'm starting to feel a little bit more confident on that number. I still am concerned about the tap-in fees, but we have a couple or more months, and there may be things out there that I'm not aware of or could be moving a little bit faster. So we will certainly keep our eye on that line item. Parking continues to remain strong at this point in time. Looking at the expense side, we have quite a few line items that are over budget, pretty much the same that I've been talking about all year: legal, other, advertising, fuel expense. We did have our police retirements, we had a couple in the department. That line item is about $81,000 over budget, and the utilities and repairs are both over budget in the fire fund. Looking at the overtime through 9:30, the police department has about 50% remaining. Public Works is coming very close to their budget with about 8%, and wastewater still continues to be over budget at this point in time. While there are some overages, we do expect some of the increases that we have received in revenue line items that we didn't have budgeted for, such as the PHMIC and the leaned real estate taxes that we received from the county will hopefully offset some of these expenses, these overages that we are experiencing right now. Are there any questions?
Any questions, Mr. Flynn? Mr. McGinnis, any questions?
I do not.
Great. I'm thrilled to hear that some of the stuff we've been talking about all year is trending well. It's perfect timing. So that's good. I appreciate the update. Thank you. Any public comment or questions on item 3A? Okay, great. So we're good then to move on. Thank you again. We're good then to move on to item 3B, which is to discuss the revolving loan establishment and guidelines.
We'd actually like to table this line item for next month.
Sounds good to me, especially considering the time. So thank you.
We just need a little more time with everything coming together this last few weeks.
Great, sounds good. Thanks. And that would mean we're good to move on to item 4A, which is to consider Resolution Tax Collection Act 57.
So this act was signed into law in July of this year. This law amends the local tax collection law to allow for the local tax authorities a waiver of tax and penalty and fees for new property owners who did not receive a tax bill within their first year of owning their property. The act actually went into effect on October 11th of this year. And the act requires that the taxing districts within 90 days of that effective date must enact a resolution or an ordinance to implement the provisions of the act. Those provisions being that beginning in the tax year 2023, the tax collector will waive penalties on late payment of real estate taxes for taxpayers that provide certain items. The first thing being a waiver request. This must be submitted within 12 months of the transfer of the real property. An attestation that notice of the tax bill was never received by the property owner. A copy of the deed with the date of the transfer, and then the payment of the face value of their tax notice along with that waiver request.
I do have a question. What's
Yeah.
the context of this Act 57?
So meaning kind of what's the point of it?
Right. I mean, typically you would, unless you bought a home late in the year, you wouldn't get that property tax most likely.
I think it just has to do more with people that, you know, there's first time property owners out there and they probably don't know what the whole process is. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times we get phone calls in our office that, you know, people want to know what you have to do. Well, I didn't get it. Is that really my responsibility? That type of thing.
Escrow and,
Yes.
right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, this is basically an opportunity for property owners to not be penalized. In other words, the Act 57 was written to address situations where new property owners do not receive their property tax bill, and through no fault of their own, the new property owners are being assessed with late penalties for a bill they never received. So that's the thinking that went into this piece of legislation.
Well, that's a little confusing because when you buy a property, you either pay a prorated tax or you refund the people that you're buying the property from that they've paid the tax. So, as Mr. McGinnis says, this seems like it doesn't make much sense because everything's done right there at the settlement table. You know, people, you don't have, you really don't have an option when you're at the settlement table on the tax side of it, you know, because they're prorating and rebating. So,
I think the only thing could be is maybe if it's a cash deal, or if there's an issue or somehow issue with escrow, that it maybe didn't generate. But I just wanted to know the context, so thank you for that, Barb.
Great. I don't have any questions about this. I would love to be able to relate to this issue, but I can't yet. So hopefully soon. Thank you.
Yes.
And we're being told we have to. It's, yeah. Any public comment or question? Alrighty. Item 4B is to approve using $10,264.25 in ARPA funding for accounting software upgrades.
So I come before you tonight on behalf of my department, asking for a request to upgrade the current software that we are using. We've been using Abilla since the early 2000s. When we first got the product, it was, housed on our network downstairs, and we've since moved to hosting services that are hosted through Abilla. But this service, overall, it's satisfactory, but we have been running into connectivity issues. We do have 4 people within my department and administration that use this software on a daily basis. And it can become a real pain in the neck when, you're trying to get in there and the thing sits there and it keeps running and running and you can't get in. And it always happens when, I'm trying to get ready for meetings or we're trying to get stuff done. So that's one of the big things that we're looking for in this upgrade. We're also looking to have a system that we can house everything in. So currently we have Abilla, but a lot of times the software, we're not able to use it for all of the things that we do. So any reconciliations, the budget, POs, bank recs, everything we have to export out of Excel. And we'd like to be able to use one system where everything is housed in that system and everybody can use it. And that also leads to the next step, that I'd like to engage more of our department heads in our finances and in our reporting. And this proposal that you have before you will allow them read-only access so that they can look at their own information and be able to access that and get the information more quickly than, a month or so after the fact. So that's my spiel, and I would really appreciate it.
Yeah. Question?
No.
Mr. Flynn? Mr.
The
McGinnis?
question I have is, how do we decide on this program that or is it a universal accounting program that most of the government's using?
So we've been using this for quite some time. It's probably one of those programs that not too many people have heard of. A lot of, the new people that we've have interviewed for, the jobs within the department, a lot of people use QuickBooks. Personally, I'm not a fan of that. I've used that in my past, job that I had. I like the system personally, but one of the big things, I think it's not exactly user friendly. And I'm hoping that this upgrade will help some of that part, as well as the reporting. That's the big thing for me, being able to get good information out of there that, people can understand and it's logical and everything.
Yeah, that was honestly my only question, was around reporting. Is that going to change some of the reports that we get in council as well with new software, or will it look the same?
So
as it
right
does
now, a lot of the reports that I produce every month, we don't run them through the system, just because the way the system is, you have to build a lot of the reports. So you've got to tell the system, well, select line A and then bring it from here. And sometimes it just kind of gets jumbled. So we export a lot of it out to Excel. But what I'm trying to do is keep that all within one system, which I think it makes it easier for, people in the accounting world to use one system that everyone can, have access to.
Yeah, it sounds like it's worth every penny then if you're putting stuff into Excel.
Yeah.
So yeah, it sounds
Probably
good to me.
being a little selfish, but I'm hoping to make life a little easier. So
No, I don't think that's selfish at all. Any public comments or questions? Sure, come on up.
Harold Cook, South Lawn Street. Is this an annual fee?
So this proposal that you have before you now is just a one-time fee for the upgrade, and it's also a one-time fee to add a module for bank reconciliations.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other public questions or comments? Any issues with this? We can call it 3-0? Excellent. Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. And then item 4C is to approve our preliminary 2023 budget and set a hearing date for November.
So what I've put together here is a summary of the changes made, and then attached to this front page is the budget as it stands now. So if you remember at last month's work session meeting, the budget that Mr. Metric presented to you, the general fund was not in balance. It was actually out of balance by about $251,000 or so. So we met with some of our larger departments to look at some of the expenses that could be reduced. We also went through, some of the smaller line items to see if any of those things could be reduced, or if there was any new revenues that we could bring in to help offset this overage. One of the meetings we had was with the police chief, and we went and we sat down and we looked at each officer's salary. We went line by line to see if there was any reductions we could make for any of the officers that were out on workers' comp, or if there would be any upcoming retirements. And Chief Moorhead felt pretty confident in his department and the employees that are in place now, and he felt as though that there would be no retirements in 2023. So one of the line items within the police department in that document that you had last month, we had an additional $50,000 in there, and that line item was to pay specifically for any retirements in 2023. And the reason that we put additional expense in there is because the way the governmental funds under GASB have to account for payouts of compensated absences. Typically, when you run an accounting, any accounting department, you are recording your books on accrual accounting. We're modified accrual, so any expenses that we incur, we have to record them as soon as we have the liability, except for compensated absences. We expense them as soon as, they become due. So that's one of the big differences between governmental and, regular accounting. So we were able to reduce police salaries by $50,000. We were also able to reduce insurance expense by $26,000. And this was in the budget that you had, we had assumed that we were going to have a 15% increase on our general liability. We got some information back from the broker that would be around 10%. So I went through and I made the changes, the number that we were able to arrive at. Within the building and housing department, we are going to add a new line item for fire inspection revenue. We have that at $60,000. That should help offset the new employee ask that is in this budget. And the last item, we tried to look at some different options, maybe, a different way of looking at how we could balance this budget. And we are looking to take some of the earnings that we earn, each month in the capital operating reserve. And we feel that, $113,000 is completely doable. If you go to the next page, Jeff, I put together, what our investment earnings are as of each date. If you look at all of those numbers, we've never fallen below $113,000. So I'm confident that this is a good number. It's something that we can certainly, transfer from that fund on a monthly basis. Each month, whatever the interest is, we can transfer that over into the general fund. And with the reduction in salaries, the reduction in insurance expense, and the two new revenue line items, we were able to balance the budget on the general fund side. The last three funds, the wastewater, stream protection, and parking, those funds were already in balance. We just had to add a few line items for some projects that were in the 2022 budget, but may not be completed. So we'd like to move them forward to 2023. In wastewater, we added a $75,000 grant for the sewer relining, so that will help offset some of that capital expense. We also reduced our capital expense by $55,000 for an AC project that was in this budget that they didn't think they could get accomplished, but they believe that will be, taken care of by year end. And then we also increased the utilities because the wastewater fund is a big user of that energy, and those prices are going to go up in 2023. Looking at the stream protection fund, Jeff, if you could go back to page 1, please. So we have 2 projects that may not be completed by year end. So we added a cash reserve line item for those 2 projects, the Greenview Alley for $60,000 and the West Washington Street project for $195,000. And then on the parking fund, we also added a cash reserve line item for $64,873. And this is for some additional roof work that may not be completed this year that we're going to push forward to next year. Are there any questions?
Great. Mr. McGinnis? Mr. Flynn?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Thank you. Barbara, just 2 questions. Mr. Metric may have to jump in on the situation. When you began your presentation for your line items, I noticed that the liquid fuels line item, we had $661,000 still sitting in liquid fuels. Is that the budgeted number, or is that actual money that we can actually spend?
In 2023?
Yeah.
No, that,
No, the
the financials.
financials, yeah. And we're getting very close to
So yes, the,
ending
I just need to
paving
pull it up here.
because of the temperature, and I'm concerned about that. We don't fall into that pitfall again.
So the liquid fuels, we typically get an allocation each year for around $400,000, give or take. We actually had a cash reserve line item in the budget for around $200,000 to pay for the paving projects. Those projects were put on hold due to COVID, so we had some catch up over the past 2 years. So it's kind of a 2-piece. Part of it's cash reserves and the actual allocation. We did pay the big paving project that was due for 2022. So I think I have the cash balance at this time is $211,000. I know that we have our big transfer that will be occurring from the general fund to the liquid fuels fund to take care of the audit finding. And then there will be additional expenses that we'll be able to transfer back from the liquid fuels fund into the general fund. So,
Okay. All right, but Mr. Metric, we are done paving for the year?
Yes.
Okay,
We've concluded and the contractor's been paid.
excellent. The second question is the capital reserve. That's a reserve that Mr. Allen and I have always come to love. But are we now allowing the pension board to invest that money for us? Because we did talk about that a month or 2 ago. I think we've been talking about it every month. Barb, the current interest rate that we're getting on the capital reserve, do you know what that is off the top of your head?
it's around 2.43%.
Okay, so I don't know whether we're allowed to do it. It may be too much money, but the Citadel Bank Savings and Loan, I don't know how large of a deposit they could take from us, but their deposit return right now is 3.25. So, I mean, it's, I've moved money because it's better than what I'm getting at any bank around. I don't know whether they're allowed to do that or not.
So we actually have, I thought I had the investment policy with me here. It's probably somewhere, but per the policy, we are required to invest in US backed treasuries and notes and, that sort of, those sort of vehicles for investing. So that most likely would fall under it, but I just wanted to put that out there that we do have certain guidelines that we have to invest by.
Well, you said that the savings and loans, that's not FDIC, but it's some kind of 4 letters of protection. But would that be able to use that vehicle?
That's a really good question. I would have to, review the policy to make sure it should be okay, but I can certainly get back to you on that.
Because
I don't,
yeah, that's the maximum rate I've seen out on the street right now, except if you invest in Mr. McGinnis, and he'll take care of like 5 to 10% for you.
Yeah, we'll see about that. First, I just want to go on the record and commend you and everyone for getting that budget in balance. I think it's a good thing that we're not raising taxes, especially during inflation still at 8.5%. Those numbers came out today. As far as investing the reserve in anything fluctuating, I would be totally against that. I think that either would be a money market fund with a higher interest rate or some type of savings account out there. And you're talking about SIPC insurance, that's for brokerage that you would be dealing with. So shopping around, I think, is good. Interest rates are going to go up. Okay. So you're probably looking at 4.26% probably by next year, maybe even higher. So I think it's good. At 2.49 is pretty good. To Mr. Flynn's point, and now with treasuries and whatnot, they're a little over 4%. However, we have to keep them in there, I believe, for a certain period of time. If we do that, so we just need to be cognizant of that type of investment vehicle. But otherwise, I'm glad to see this budget is in balance. I think it's a good thing for the community, and great job, everyone.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I guess a question I had, I just wanted to make sure I was understanding the interest on the capital reserve fund. Was that just like a month by month, like play by play, how much we've accrued in that in interest for the year?
yeah, so each month we earn interest on that. And my plan would be to keep everything running smoothly, that each month we would transfer that particular, we would take that $113,000 and basically divide that by 12. But, if that number was more than what we actually earned, then we would never transfer more than what the budget was.
Okay,
And
yeah.
I would like to do that on a monthly basis because it keeps the statements flowing smoothly. We do that with our other transfers now. We basically take, if the parking fund is going to transfer $1.7 million into the general fund, we transfer that money each month. So it doesn't look like it's a big influx coming in. And I would do the same, type with this transfer from the capital operating reserve.
Good. Yeah, I appreciate that. So if I'm understanding it correctly, then if we just say that like our returns next year are going to be the same as they've been this year, it doesn't sound like all of the interest would even be taken out. Am I understanding that
No, I would
correctly?
only be transferring what is budgeted. And at this point in time, that amount would be the $113,000. So there wouldn't be any more than that transferred into the general fund. It would just be that amount because that's what was approved.
Great. So yeah, it's kind of tough math, but that's like maybe a third
I'm
of
sorry.
what are we at now? Like 270 for the year? What was that?
So that was just a running balance of what the interest earnings were for that each point in time. I don't have the number that we're at, at exactly at 9:30 because I did it by, it was at 9:30 and then I added it, but it's probably, I would say, closer to $150,000 to $200,000, but I can certainly get, the exact number back to you.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I didn't realize we were starting in 21.
And those
That
numbers
makes
are
more
only going
sense
to go
now.
up with the interest rates going up too.
Yeah, I mean, I was just trying to be conservative and say that, through each of those months or at those points in time, this is what we're at, and we never dipped below $113,000. That's why I'm comfortable with that number, that we will earn that. It's not going to be anything, less than that. So.
Right. I think that's a sound policy.
Great. Yeah, it answers my question for sure. So thank you. Yeah, and I again appreciate the work, and it's really nice to
Thank you.
be in this situation in October. It's really nice.
The follow-up question I just asked Mr. Allen, since we're going to be using the accrued interest out of the capital reserve, do we have to do a resolution for withdrawal?
I'll check on that, but I don't think so. I think if the budget authorizes all kinds of transfers and activities that staff can carry out. If it requires something special, I'll definitely make sure that's on our radar for approval, but I don't think it
Yeah.
does. That's
Okay.
my opinion at this point.
Any public questions, comments, concerns? Wow, that's pretty good. We shouldn't flip the meetings anymore, I feel like, after that smart growth meeting.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, great. So that was 4C. I still have to give thanks every year after doing COVID budgeting as my first year on council. That was awful. We can move on to 4D, which is to approve our September minutes, which I had no issues with. Okay, great. And then item 5 is other business. Is there any other question? I thought we were saying 3:0 to talk about a hearing date at work session. Okay. Yeah, I think that makes sense with the full group. It's a good point. Or we're still, okay, we're in other business. Any other business tonight? All right, we can adjourn at 7:57.